Hey everybody, how are you doing? I hope that you are finding some calm, some happiness, some whatever it is that you need to do for yourself um, to feel safe and to feel supported at this crazy, crazy point in time. We just got the word that school closures are extended through May 1st. It is March 24th today, and it brought a lot of things to the surface for me. Um, Not necessarily because of how it's affecting me and my life right now, but because of experiences that I had growing up, where this whole pandemic is really recreating my childhood. It's recreating the isolation. It's recreating the idea of schooling at home, of online school, homeschool, crisis schooling. I actually really like that term that people have been using because unless you have actually filed, this is for Utah anyway, I'm not sure about other states, but unless you've actually filed an affidavit with the state, you can't technically call yourself a homeschooler. And a lot of homeschooling families are kind of taking a little issue with this because they've worked really hard on creating um, a safe place and some societal acceptance for the homeschooling community, which has been hard to come by in a lot of instances. And so I really like the term crisis schooling. And as parents, you probably would appreciate that, probably to some degree. I might be wrong, but when you label it as, yes, we're in crisis mode, it's like, oh, that's totally different than we're homeschoolers now, right? Like, it's a whole different feel. Anyway, that moves me into kind of what I want to talk about, because there was a book that completely shifted things for me in my mind. And it was written by a girl I know, Tara Westover, and it's called Educated. If you have not read it yet, it is so good. It's worth the read. It's not necessarily pretty, but it is a courageous demonstration of telling your story. And let me tell you a little bit of the background of how I came to own the book Educated. My sister and I were studying education at the same time. She was studying elementary ed and I was studying special education. And she sent me this link for Google, for Educated on Google Reads, along with the description. And she said, hey, we should get this and read it together. And I was like, Tara Westover? I know Tara Westover. Like, this is somebody from my childhood. I remember Tara. And so I looked her up and I was like, yes, it's the same Tara. This is so cool. And I started reading the reviews on the book and saw that it was like a New York Times bestseller. And so I got on her website really fast and I was like, I don't know if you remember me, but I don't remember what I said. I don't know if you remember me, but our families knew each other and we hung out sometimes. And I see that you wrote a book and it is successful. Congratulations. I hope you're doing well, right? Like, just something kind of generic like that. Well, my sister calls me back that afternoon and she's like, I want to say she's crying, laughing, is kind of how I remember it. But she had ordered the book online. I had already ordered it to come hard copy, this one. I'd already ordered this one. And she downloaded the ebook and began reading. And she calls me and she was like, oh my gosh, Maria, I have to read you this part. And so she opens the book and she goes, chapter 2, the midwife. And I was like, Really? That was our mom. Okay, so chapter 2, the midwife. The midwife is our mom. And she continues to read this description of our mother, which was spot on. Okay, we'll leave it there. But then she gets to this part, and I'm just going to read it to you because I want you to imagine how I'm feeling as I read this, okay, for the first time. The midwife nodded goodbye, her arms full of mother's herbs. The next time the midwife came, she brought her daughter Maria, who stood next to her mother, imitating her movements, with a baby wedged against her wiry 9-year-old frame. I stared hopefully at her. I hadn't met many other girls like me who didn't go to school. I edged closer, trying to draw her attention, but she was wholly absorbed in listening to her mother, who was explaining how cramp bark and motherwort should be administered to treat post-birth contractions. Maria's head bobbed in agreement. Her eyes never left her mother's face. I trudged down the hall to my room, alone, but when I turned to shut the door, she was standing in it, still toting the baby on her hip. He was a meaty box of flesh, and her torso was bent sharply at the waist to offset his bulk. "Are you going?" she asked. I didn't understand the question. "I always go," she said. "Have you seen a baby get born?" "No." "I have, lots of times. Do you know what it means when a baby comes breech?" "No." I said it like an apology. That was me. And memory is a funny thing, because as I'm reading it, I absolutely can conjure that exact image up in my head. I can actually smell the inside of her house, the herbs and things that smelled a lot like my house, right? And I have this very faint, vague memory of her as a person and their property and playing and a tree in their yard and their porch and just very vague things, right? But the thing that it triggered was that rush of memories that came from that portion of my childhood. I've worked really hard to reframe a lot of my memories so that they're not destructive to me emotionally and mentally, because a lot of things were tinged in abuse and violence during that period of our lives. And so I've tried really hard to focus on the good and focus on the positive that came out of it. I feel extremely, extremely lucky, I guess, to have had that exposure and experience of helping deliver babies as a young girl, because I just found it fascinating, honestly. I loved the process. I loved being in it. I loved a lot about it, from just holy cow, this is amazing that we do this as humans. But on another level, it was something that that my mother and I shared as a bond, which was uniquely ours, uniquely hers and mine. And I probably had more positive experiences with my mother than a lot of my other 12 siblings, because we shared some of that time together, just her and I, or usually it was her and I and a baby, because usually every 2 years there was a baby born, and she was nursing between all of her pregnancies, and so I was taking care of a baby or helping her, I was just helping her assist at birth. So anyway, reading about yourself in a book is the most surreal experience ever. It was beautiful, but at the same time, how do I even say this? It stole from me all the excuses that I'd ever had about not telling my story. about not sharing some of those really, really difficult stories and incidences growing up, because I realized the power of storytelling, and I realized that there are still people who need help. There are still people who, there are still kids, there are still parents who are stuck in abusive cycles that don't necessarily feel safe reaching out for resources because of potential repercussions, kids getting taken away, or having, the child services show up on your doorstep. And so there's a lot of secrecy that goes on, and I know that. I know it because this, and because this. It just is a thing, and we can't turn away from it. We can't pretend like it's not there. So what I want to do now, I'm already at like 11 minutes here, so if you're still here, thanks for watching. But I wanted to share just a few of the resources that I've come across to help me to move past, because Tara went and she got her doctorate degree, and so she did a lot of schooling, and she's my age, so we were actually born the same year. And so she's like sitting with a doctorate degree, and I did get married at 19, and I had a baby. I was pregnant a little over a year later, and I had 3 more kids after that, and we've moved and like chased jobs and things like that. So I've kind of had to learn on the job of how to shift my mind and how to shift behaviors, and it has not been easy. I remember the point that I was like, I have to stop yelling. I have to stop yelling at my children, because I don't want them to remember me like this. I don't want them to be afraid of me. And then there was that other moment that was like, I have to stop hitting my children. And that's really hard to admit in a space like this, but it's real. It's what happened. And so I've done a lot of work to change how I react, change how I see things, change the way I relate to my children, change the expectations I have for my children. So one of the earliest books that I got my hands on was this one called Invincible by Brian F. Martin. And this one, the subtitle is The 10 Lies You Learn Growing Up with Domestic Violence and the Truths to Set You Free. This was so crucial in my journey to start to just recognize that a lot of the things that I was experiencing weren't necessarily my fault, but I was definitely responsible for changing my reactions, changing my behavior, and for learning how to transform my experiences into something different for my own kids. So Invincible, highly recommend that if this is something that you struggle with. Another one that I just, Brene Brown, guys. I cannot even say enough about Brene Brown. So Daring Greatly, I love this one. The last one that I read of hers was Rising Strong, also so good. So this subtitle is How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. And man, the work that she has done on overcoming shame and guilt in order to face the problems that are real, instead of just trying to fake your way through life or put on this facade that everything's fine when everything is not fine. I love her. I love everything that she everything that I have read so far that she has written, and all of her videos and interviews, and she's great. So get your hands on some Brene Brown. She's so good. Another one is Dr. Shefali. I've talked about her a lot. So Shefali, I don't even know how to say her last name. I forgot. Sawberry? Not even gonna pretend. Dr. Shefali is what she goes by on social media, her Instagram, her Facebook. Really, really great to follow her. She wrote this book, The Awakened Family. She wrote another one called Conscious Parenting. Also very, very good. How to raise empowered, resilient, and conscious children. And conscious is the key here, because until you decide to dig into why you do the things that you do and consciously make decisions to change, you will do things on autopilot. That's the way that we're wired. And from a very, very young age, we create the lens through which we see the world. We create the structure that we fit everything in, that is the safe structure. This is how I'm accepted. This is how I'm lovable. This is how, this is where I belong. And everything outside of that is dangerous. Everything outside of that is off limits, right? So you have this structure that we try to fit everything into, and until you consciously break down those barriers and break down that structure and deconstruct, then again, like, you're just going to go on autopilot. So The Awakened Family, or Conscious Parenting by Dr. Shefali. Super, super recommend. And then this one is one that I haven't finished yet. This is by Nadine Burke Harris. Okay. I believe she is still the Surgeon General of California. I should look that up. Don't quote me on that. But I listened to a podcast episode that she was on that was about childhood adversity, and this book is called Healing the Long-Term Effects of Childhood Adversity. And the podcast was just phenomenal. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I cried, because I just related so much to what she was saying and the effects that I had experienced in my own life and in parenting and in relationships. And it just validated so much of my struggle and it was so healing. And so I'm really excited to dig into this book. But The Deepest Well, that's another one that Nadine Burke Harris, we need her in the world right now. The other one that I highly recommend, if you like a lot of scientific studies and things like that, is The Body Keeps the Score. And that one is, again, it focuses a lot on trauma and stress and childhood abuse and the effects on a mental level, emotional level, physical level. And it's so just interesting and fascinating and scary how much things affect us that we wish didn't, and that are downplayed in society. So anyway, I hope this helps somebody. I hope that maybe you're inspired to go download an ebook or listen to an audiobook, or just start looking up articles. Just start making a decision that if you are struggling in your relationship, if you are struggling in how to deal with your children, if you're struggling with anger and outbursts and blind rages, all of these things, they're not okay, but they happen, and they have to be dealt with, because until you consciously start making these decisions to do things differently, it's going to go on loop. And it's really, really hard to break out of, but it's not impossible. And if anybody needs to talk confidentially, if you need to if you want more information, I have a few more resources I can share. I'm going to be doing some more videos, just kind of hitting highlights on a lot of these authors and what I've learned. But anyway, good luck, okay? Good luck. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna get through this. I feel like everybody's saying that right now. It's gonna be fine. We're all gonna get through this together. And yeah, reach out to somebody if you need help, if you are struggling. And I love you.